And do you hear that? That is the sound of my incoming success, or the evening flights at the airport, or the highway, because I live right next to one, and my desk is right in front of a window. So I hear just about everything. My original plan was to record all of my videos at about 1 a.m. in the morning, or between 12 a.m. and 1 a.m. in the morning, because that was around the time that all of my neighbors had got in, none of the screaming kids were outside, and all of the evening flights had gone away, and the traffic on the highway has died down. But if you follow my blog, mydyslexicworld.com, you know that I have recently made some life changes, and that's because I can't support myself just yet off of freelancing or the funding that I get from Patreon. So I've gone to work a night job at UPS, and I'm doing that for the season, so that's about a month and a half that I'm going to be having a very small window to do a lot of my videos. But that is not why you clicked play on this particular one. No, you hit play because the next installment of The Soul of a Rabbit is out. It is ready to be read. So if you hadn't, head on over to my Patreon or my Wattpad, catch up on what is available, then come back here and we will continue with the series breakdown. These are the videos that I'm putting together that talks about where I got a lot of my inspirations and influences that I molded together to create the narratives that I do. I'm trying to keep these videos short, between 10 to 20 minutes, so I don't overwhelm you with the ideas I have and can flip the conversation back over to you. So let's get into it. In the last video, I talked about why I started writing, how Bun Bun came about because of a need to lighten my darker narratives, how I transitioned into how his story transitioned into Jarek's story, and how Jarek's character development actually influenced a lot of the world building. I was going to continue on talking about the world building and some of the story lore that didn't actually make it into this series, but as I started working on the videos, I realized that I was about to unintentionally spoil a lot of the plot, and that is because at the time of recording this particular video, only the 4th chapter, I'm only out 4 chapters, and I have one more chapter to go. So until that's been released, I'm going to hold off, and instead, I wanted to talk about the way I approached this narrative or storytelling and how it changed over the course of the chapters, because I find it really interesting. And I talked to a friend about it who's been following the release of this series, and I asked him if he had noticed how my writing style changed, and he said he hadn't. So I'm not quite sure how obvious it is, but I definitely wanted to share it. Now, when I talk about writing style, I mean the author's voice. This is the way that an author writes their stories. Some write in first person, like the Dresden Files or the Hunger Games. Some write in third person, like Harry Potter, or the way that I wrote this narrative was definitely in third person. And some do head hopping, which is what I sometimes do. And what that means is you switch from one character's perspective to another character's perspective. Now, this is very risky to do, and that is because during the transition from one character to another character, you may lose the reader and they don't know whose head you're actually in or who you're walking behind. The only time that I might have been in another character's perspective was in the very first chapter when you're first meeting Miss Lev, Bardolph, and Abelina. It was definitely not from Jarek's perspective. And the reason this happened was actually because I was approaching the story as if I was writing a film. Meaning I was putting way more emphasis on the character's speaking lines and using the character's dialogue to tell the story. And that's what this is. This is a character's speaking line. Character's dialogue serves a few purposes to the overall narrative. Character development, motivation, or to move the plot forward. I started writing in this film-like way because I wanted the characters to handle everything and thought it would be the best way to grab my readers. This is why the first 2 chapters I focus more on the conversations rather than the description parts of the narrative. Dialogue for much of the story was definitely my main focus. I must have written the conversations at least 6 or 7 times before I settled on what you eventually see in the overall series. And I didn't play around with character accents or anything like that because I wanted to stay simple and not overcomplicate things, because it can get overcomplicated or a little bit more technical when you're trying to add in some accents, because you do have to write weird inflections, such as if a character is saying nothing but they have a tendency to drop the G's or be a little bit more, I was about to say hood, like nuttin'. You're going to write out how that actually sounds so that the reader gets an idea and has that voice in their head. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just focus on the characters delivering the overall story through the way that they were talking and their interactions. And that was what I thought would best or set up a lot of the scenes for readers. And again, this is mostly what you see in film or any sort of visual medium. By the 3rd chapter, I realized I had a problem with delivering the story just through speaking lines, and that was exposition or on-the-nose dialogue. This made the narrative start to become clunky, so I started to transition into a more traditional style for novels and slowly abandon the script format. When I mention exposition, this did happen a couple of times within the narrative. The first time that Jarek and Miss Lev meet, there's a lot of exposition about champions, black and white champions, the relationship with the gods, and how the overall madness starts to take over champions. The second time, and probably one of the biggest times that I saw exposition really start to pop up in the story, is when Euphoria was introduced and the conversation between Euphoria and Judy. Judy served 2 purposes to the story. One, to show Jarek's caution, but the other one was to act as the layman, or the average Joe, the person that wasn't in the know of the champions or a lot of Jarek's backstory. And Euphoria's entire job was to deliver that information so that the readers would understand. So Judy ended up in that part just kind of playing the reader who needed the explanation to about Jarek's past and a little bit about the champions. Another good way to kind of really understand exposition, I mean, if you go talk to any film teacher or film person, they're going to be like, exposition's all over the place. But exposition actually comes from a lot of the old-time radio dramas, particular ones like the detective series, where you might see them do this weird pause, look at the camera, or because it's old-time radio, this sort of a pause, and they tell you what's happening within the scene. As a good example, I was listening to an old-time radio drama called Richard Diamond, and there's a lot of times where he would just tell you what he was doing. I heard the footsteps coming down the hall, right? That's a lot of exposition. And it worked back then because there wasn't a very big visual component to it. It was radio. And stories sort of that same way. There isn't a very big visual component, so exposition tends to happen. The place it shouldn't happen a whole lot, though, is within the dialogue. So when I realized that I had this problem, I had to start transitioning into the way that you see typical narratives within novels and short stories. And I started to pay way more focus to the description part. So by the 5th chapter, I did completely abandon the whole script format and focus way more on the description. The other reason why is because and you'll see this in the 3rd chapter, love action. You can ask my roommates or my mom or my dad or anybody that knows me really, really well. I love action. My DVD collection, almost all of my Netflix account is just so full of action. And I mean martial arts. I have Tony Jaa, Muay Thai, the guy from The Raid, whatever his name is. The Raid 2 is probably one of my favorite martial arts films. There's also a Korean film that I really enjoy, which is The Man from Nowhere. Jackie Chan, Donnie Yen. Yeah, I loved Ip Man. Grandmaster. All of those videos. And probably one of my most favorite action films is actually... they call it Danny Boy? Unleashed with Jet Li. Those are all of my favorite I just love martial arts films, and you can definitely see that start to come out in a lot of the writing and the way my characters move. In the 5th chapter, I completely focus on just the whole description part of action, and I do touch a little bit on it in the 3rd chapter between the fight between Mrs. Lev and Jarek. So I think that's about it. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more I could talk about, but this is the point where I really want to turn the conversation back over to you guys. So answer these few questions if you would, down in the comment section below. Did you actually notice a change in my writing style at all? Do you kind of see where I get some of my influences for a lot of the action that I'm writing? Is there anything about my style that you see right now that you think I could really work on? I know I tend to get caught up a lot in passive voice, past tense, present tense, and I know I mix those up. That's something that I'm definitely working on. But overall, is at least the style something that you can kind of get behind? So, that's what can be answered in the comment section below, or you can ask me a bunch of questions as well. And I will do my best to either answer in another video. I think I will do one more video for any of the questions that I get in the comment sections. I'll pick a few good ones, and I'll probably do that in a completely separate video after the entire series is over. Okay, so you know the drill. Follow, like, comment, but most important of all, okay. Have I mentioned my Patreon? These are the names of the most beautiful people I know, because they donated to me, that's why. I am incredibly thankful for everybody who has donated to my platform so far. Just even having $1 more takes a lot of the stress off of deciding how much my own work is worth. And it turns that back onto you guys. You can let me know how much you think my stuff is worth. Also, it's not like I'm locking you into you can only view all of this if you pay the $1. I'm also releasing this for free because the most important thing to me is also getting as many readers as I can. I cannot become a better writer unless I have readers, unless I have a conversation going on between you guys and me so that I can become better. So, that being said, you know the drill. Follow, like, comment in the section below. And most important of all, share. Until the next series breakdowns, my beautiful people, I'll see you later.